It's a warm summer evening in Dubai, 2008. In a luxurious apartment tower overlooking the marina, a concerned relative of Lebanese pop star Suzanne Tamim walks down the quiet hallway toward her door. Suzanne hasn't responded to calls all day, which is unusual for her. They knock on the door, no response. Strangely, it's slightly ajar. Pushing it open, they step inside the quiet, elegant flat and freeze. There, in the entryway corridor, lies Suzanne Tamim's body on the marble floor. Blood pools around her and splatters the walls. Her face is marred by wounds, and her throat has been viciously slashed. The room is eerily silent except for the distant hum of the air conditioning. In that crushing moment, reality sets in. The beloved 30-year-old singer, a shining star of the Arab pop world, has been brutally murdered in her own home. Shock and panic ripple through the building. Within minutes, Dubai police are on the scene, sealing off the apartment. Crime scene investigators methodically begin gathering evidence: a bloody footprint on the tile, a discarded maintenance uniform, a knife sheath, and spots of blood on a discarded pair of men's coveralls found in a dumpster outside. Amid the chaos, whispers spread. Is that Suzanne Tamim, the famous Lebanese singer? Residents watch from behind police tape as officers escort stunned witnesses, including building security guards, out for questioning. The city's nightlife carries on outside, oblivious. But inside that tower, the grim discovery marks the beginning of a case that will soon grip 3 countries in scandal. Suzanne Abdel Sattar Tamim was born on September 23, 1977, in Beirut, Lebanon. She grew up in a close-knit Muslim family during a turbulent period in Lebanon's history. As a child, little Suzanne loved to sing. In fact, her father Abed al-Sattar Tamim recalls her singing tajweed, Quranic hymns, and popular songs for friends and neighbors even as a toddler. To her proud parents, she was a beautiful and talented girl, but her father was also very protective. He had seen the darker sides of the entertainment industry and was wary of letting Suzanne pursue fame. She lived a full life under my auspices. I sometimes regret that I was overprotective as she was growing up, her father later reflected. He kept a close watch on his daughter, limiting unsupervised outings and especially interactions with boys. Despite his caution, Suzanne's talent was undeniable, and by her teens, she was blossoming into a striking beauty who drew attention wherever she went. In 1994, as a college student at Beirut Arab University, 17-year-old Suzanne made a fateful choice. She fell in love with a fellow student, Ali Muzanar, and the two secretly eloped. For the first time, Suzanne exercised her independence, marrying against her family's initial wishes. The very next year, 1996, her big break arrived. Suzanne auditioned for Studio El Fan, Lebanon's most popular televised talent show, similar to American Idol. To her father's mixed dismay and pride, Suzanne wowed the judges and won the competition's gold medal for Best Young Singer. Audiences were enchanted by her rich voice and charismatic stage presence. Overnight, 19-year-old Suzanne Tamim became Lebanon's newest starlet, a pop princess in the making. Suzanne's showbiz career took off quickly. Capitalizing on her Studio El Fan victory, she released hit singles in the late 1990s, catchy pop tracks like Home In, 1996, and Ana Kida Lo Aheb, 1999, and even starred in a 1997 musical theatre production, Garda Al-Kamelia, composed by Elias Rahbani. By her early 20s, Suzanne was a fixture on Arab TV and at concerts, admired for her glamorous looks and powerful voice. She put out a successful debut album in 2002 titled Sakan Albi, Living in My Heart, under the major label Rotana. For a moment, it seemed Suzanne Tamim was poised to join the ranks of Lebanon's iconic divas. Yet even as her public star was rising, Suzanne's personal life was growing complicated. her hastily married husband, Ali Muzanar, had taken on the role of her manager and tried to control her career and finances. According to Suzanne's brother Khalil, Ali began treating Suzanne not as a beloved wife, but as a business, a possession. Conflicts erupted between Ali and Suzanne's family. He resisted giving her a divorce even as the marriage deteriorated. Feeling trapped, Suzanne turned to her parents for help. Eventually, under family pressure, Ali Muzanar agreed to divorce Suzanne, but not without compensation. In a startling transaction, a Lebanese entertainment promoter named Adel Matouk stepped forward to free Suzanne from her first marriage. Matouk reportedly paid Ali Muzanar $1.5 million to secure Suzanne's divorce in the late 1990s. It was an unusual dowry of sorts, money in exchange for Suzanne's freedom, but it worked. Ali let her go. For Suzanne, Adel Matouk seemed like a savior at first. He was well connected in the music industry, a prominent concert organizer, and promised to help guide her career. Matouk was a way out, so she took it, one journalist later explained. Indeed, not long after her divorce, Suzanne married Adel Matouk as her second husband. She was still only in her early 20s, young, hopeful, and perhaps naive about the new set of challenges this marriage would bring. Life with Adel Matouk initially offered Suzanne professional stability. Under his wing, she continued to produce music and make televised appearances. However, cracks soon appeared in the relationship. Matouk was controlling and possessive, according to people who knew the couple. He had effectively bought her freedom from her first husband and now expected Suzanne to live life on his terms. He preferred she leave show business to become a full-time wife. He wanted her to stop singing and devote herself to home and family after marriage, Matouk later said, but her family told her not to listen to him and to leave. Suzanne, a born performer, could not imagine giving up her career. Predictably, the marriage deteriorated into constant fights and legal disputes. By the early 2000s, Suzanne Tamim's name was appearing in tabloids more for personal scandals than for hit songs. In 2004, matters took a dramatic turn. Suzanne decided to flee Lebanon altogether, escaping what she felt was an oppressive situation with Matouk. She quietly left Beirut and took refuge in Cairo, Egypt, where she had connections and fans. Enraged by her defiance, Adel Matouk responded with severe measures. In November 2004, Matouk filed a criminal complaint in Lebanon accusing Suzanne, along with her father and another man, of attempting to murder him. He alleged that Suzanne, her parents, and a certain Egyptian businessman had conspired to have him shot outside his home in the Beirut suburb of Dubaye. The claim was shocking, and many in the Lebanese press were skeptical, but authorities took it seriously enough to issue charges. Suddenly, Suzanne Tamim, once the darling of Lebanese media, was a wanted person in her own country, ensnared in an attempted murder case. In fact, by 2005, she ended up on Interpol's list of wanted individuals due to Matouk's accusations. Whether Matouk's allegation was true or a vengeful fabrication remains unclear. Suzanne vehemently denied plotting to kill him, but she dared not return to Lebanon to fight the charges, fearing arrest or worse. Her life had become a soap opera played out in courtrooms and headlines. Exiled in Egypt, Suzanne tried to rebuild. She was in her mid-20s, effectively cut off from her home country and locked in a legal battle with her estranged second husband. Matouk, for his part, didn't stop at criminal charges. He used his clout in the music industry to sabotage Suzanne's career. He reportedly petitioned the musicians syndicate in Egypt to ban her from performing and pressured Arab satellite channels, including Rotana, to stop playing her music. For a time, Suzanne Tamim virtually disappeared from the public stage, an enforced hiatus that lasted for years. Her last televised performance was a tribute song titled Oshak, Lovers, dedicated to the late Lebanese Prime Minister Rafik Hariri in 2006. After that, nothing. It was as if the pop princess had vanished. Cairo in the mid-2000s offered Suzanne both anonymity and new opportunities. Away from the Beirut limelight, she found support among the Arab music community in Egypt. It was during this period that Suzanne crossed paths with a man who would drastically alter the course of her life. Hisham Talat Mustafa. Hisham was not a fellow artist or producer. He was a billionaire real estate tycoon and a member of Egypt's upper house of parliament, the Shura Council. As the heir to the Talat Mustafa Group conglomerate, Hisham was one of the most influential businessmen in the country. He was also a married man, more than a decade older than Suzanne. Their exact introduction remains a bit mysterious, but reports suggest Suzanne met Hisham through social circles while staying in Cairo with her aunt around 2005. Hisham Talat Mustafa became enamored with the Lebanese singer. To him, Suzanne was the epitome of the alluring Arab diva, beautiful, talented, but also vulnerable. For Suzanne, Hisham offered the kind of protection and patronage that could help her navigate the perilous waters she was in. Rumors swirled that Suzanne and Hisham entered a secret romantic relationship, possibly even an Urfi marriage, an unofficial customary marriage. Hisham showered Suzanne with luxury, 5-star hotels, gifts, financial support, and allegedly even used his influence to help keep Adelmatuk's legal harassment at bay. For a time, Suzanne found in Hisham a refuge from her troubles. But this refuge came at a price. Suzanne would later confide to friends and family that Hisham's affection turned into obsession. He wanted to control her life much like the men before him. According to court testimonies, by 2006, Suzanne decided to end the affair and distance herself from Hisham. She had seen the warning signs: jealousy, possessiveness, and a temper simmering beneath Hisham's polished exterior. Breaking up with one of the most powerful men in Egypt was not going to be easy or safe, but Suzanne was determined to reclaim her life. In 2007, Suzanne made another bold move to escape her past. She left Egypt and moved to London, England, seeking a fresh start where neither Adelmatuk nor Hisham Talat could easily reach her. In London, she found love again, this time with an Iraqi-born British kickboxing champion named Riyad Al-Azawi. Riyad and Suzanne quickly grew close and even reportedly married in an Islamic ceremony, although details were kept private. For the first time in years, Suzanne felt genuinely happy. She and Riyad settled into a stylish apartment in London's upscale Knightsbridge neighbourhood, where she lived quietly, far from Middle Eastern tabloids. Those who knew Suzanne during this time said she seemed more relaxed and hopeful about the future. Yet, even in London, shadows from Cairo loomed. Suzanne confided in Riyad Al-Azawi that Hisham Talat Mustafa was threatening her life. In a bombshell interview later given to the Sunday Times, Riyad revealed that Suzanne had shown him evidence of Hisham's threats. Hisham had allegedly issued an ultimatum through phone calls: "Come back to me and marry me for $50 million, or refuse, and I'll pay $1 million to have you killed." It was a chilling, clear threat. Riyad Al-Azawi was so alarmed that he helped Suzanne file an official complaint with the London Metropolitan Police, Scotland Yard, in early 2007. They handed over audio recordings of phone threats Suzanne had received, in which a voice believed to be Hisham's warned her and even threatened Riyad's life if she didn't return to Egypt. In one instance, Riyad recounted, a man called him claiming, "Talat sent me to kill you here in Britain." These were not idle scares. They felt like real attempts to terrorize the couple. For 18 months, Suzanne and Riyad lived in fear in London. They tried to maintain a normal life, but every time Suzanne stepped outside or answered her phone, she was looking over her shoulder. So serious was the situation that Suzanne directly told her UK police liaison, "I am alive today, but tomorrow I might be dead. Why can't you protect me?" It was an impassioned plea. Frustratingly, the British officers could do little beyond take her reports. Hisham Talat Mustafa was a foreign national and a politically connected figure, outside of their jurisdiction. According to Riyad, one officer even responded that Hisham was a prominent government figure in Egypt, implying the difficulty of intervening. British police did investigate the claims, but since no physical crime had occurred on UK soil yet, they were limited in action. They advised the couple to be cautious. It was little comfort. Suzanne's father later said his daughter felt cornered. She used to tell the British police, "I'm alive now, but I could be dead soon." she knew someone was after her. Indeed, in hindsight, her words were harrowingly prophetic. By early 2008, Suzanne decided to relocate once more, perhaps thinking a move could throw off anyone tracking her. This time, she chose Dubai. Dubai was a glittering, cosmopolitan city where many Arab celebrities lived part-time. It felt safer than Beirut or Cairo, and far enough from London to maybe confuse her stalkers. In March 2008, Suzanne quietly moved into a luxury apartment in the Jumeirah Beach residence area of Dubai Marina. She kept a low profile, not announcing her presence or engaging in public performances during those months. To the outside world, Suzanne Tamim had become reclusive. Unbeknownst to most, she was essentially in hiding, trying to start over, yet unable to fully escape the long reach of a certain man. Riyad Al-Azawi did not accompany her to Dubai. His career kept him in London, but he stayed in contact. Later, he lamented that decision, feeling he could have protected her if he had been there. Suzanne's family in Lebanon, particularly her father and brother, also worried from afar. They knew she was afraid of something, or someone. In one of her final conversations with her father, Suzanne hinted that she had made powerful enemies. Still, in those quiet months in Dubai, she tried to live normally. She decorated her new apartment on the 22nd floor of the waterfront building and frequented the gym. Neighbors rarely saw her, but when they did, she was polite and unassuming, not the vivacious stage persona they might have recognized from TV. As July 2008 arrived, Suzanne had been in Dubai about 5 months, living under the radar. She likely believed the worst was behind her. She had endured a hard, lonely journey, from teenage fame and a domineering first marriage, to a dangerous entanglement with a tycoon, to seeking refuge abroad with a new love. Now, at 30, Suzanne was hoping to reclaim her narrative. She told friends she was considering a musical comeback once her legal troubles were resolved. Perhaps she would even fly to Beirut soon to reconcile and settle matters. Hope was on the horizon. Tragically, Suzanne Tamim would never get that chance. On the morning of July 28, 2008, Suzanne woke up in her Dubai apartment unaware that this day would be her last. Sometime around 8 a.m. she received a visitor. Building security cameras later revealed that a man had been lurking around the Jumeirah Beach residence complex, waiting for an opportune moment. He was Mohsen al-Sukari, a 39-year-old former Egyptian state security police officer. Al-Sukari had flown into Dubai days earlier, on a mission far more sinister than a casual visit. He had spent time staking out Suzanne's building, noting her routine. That morning, Mohsen al-Sukari put a plan into action. Dressed as a maintenance worker, wearing a uniform and carrying what looked like an official work ID badge, Sukari approached the reception of Suzanne's tower. In one hand, he held a white plastic bag. In the other, a clipboard and an identification card. Calmly, he told the security desk that he was from the building's management company, there to perform urgent maintenance in Ms. Tamim's apartment. The staff, recalling that Suzanne had recently complained about a faulty cable or a minor issue, a ruse possibly created by Sukari himself, allowed him to proceed upstairs. At around 8:30 a.m., Sukari reached Suzanne's floor. He located her door and pressed the intercom buzzer. Inside, Suzanne, likely still in her robe, answered via the video intercom screen. She saw a man in uniform holding up an ID. "Maintenance, madam. Building management. I'm here for the repairs," he might have said. Reassured by the badge, and perhaps expecting a maintenance visit, Suzanne unlocked her door and let him in. It was a fatal mistake. As soon as Suzanne turned her back or lowered her guard, Mohsen al-Sukari sprang. He did not come to fix anything. He came armed with a knife and a terrible purpose. In a swift attack, Sukari knocked Suzanne to the ground and lunged with the knife. A struggle ensued in the foyer of the apartment. Suzanne fought bravely for her life. Later autopsy reports showed her right hand's ring finger was broken, indicating she tried to fend off her attacker. She screamed and grappled. But Sukari was physically stronger and fueled by a merciless intent. He pinned her down and slashed her with the blade. In a frenzy of violence, He stabbed Suzanne repeatedly in the neck and chest. At least 8 deep wounds, according to the forensic report. Finally, he drew the knife across her throat, slitting it open with such ferocity that it nearly severed her head. Suzanne Tamim's resistance faltered as life ebbed out of her. In moments, she bled to death on the cold floor of her own home. The time was approximately 8:34 a.m. Mohsen al-Sukari stood over the lifeless body, catching his breath. The deed was done, but his mission perhaps was not fully complete. Chillingly, reports later emerged that the mastermind who hired Sukari had demanded proof of the kill in the most gruesome way. Sukari told investigators that he was instructed to cut off Suzanne's head and bring it back as proof. He had even been promised the final installment of his payment only upon delivering this macabre trophy. Sukari attempted to comply, starting to saw at her neck, but the knife he had was not sharp or strong enough to finish decapitation. Ultimately, he abandoned that part of the plan, leaving Suzanne's body with her throat deeply slashed, but head intact. The scene was still horrific, precisely the brutal revenge killing that the mastermind had allegedly wanted. Before fleeing, Sukari quickly set about covering his tracks. He retrieved the fake ID and the bloody knife, and stuffed them into the plastic shopping bag he'd brought. He removed the maintenance uniform he was wearing, which was now likely stained with Suzanne's blood, and swapped it for different clothes he had underneath or in his bag. Security camera footage later confirmed that the man who entered in a maintenance outfit was seen leaving minutes later in different attire, carrying a white plastic bag, presumably containing the disguise and murder weapon. Sukari had thought of this. He purchased a new tracksuit, shoes, and other items in Dubai prior to the murder, so he could change immediately after the killing and appear as an unrelated passerby on cameras. He even bought a large Swiss Army knife and tools, possibly to assist in either the killing or staging. These were later found in his possession. Clutching the plastic bag, Sukari slipped out of the apartment and closed the door behind him. It was now about 8:40 a.m. on a Monday. The corridor was quiet. No neighbors in sight. As he hurried to the elevator, he dropped a letter and envelope, items he had used as part of his ruse to gain Suzanne's trust days earlier. He had previously delivered a letter to Suzanne on July 23rd, possibly a fake official notice or fan mail, to lay the groundwork for his visit. He didn't stop to pick them up. In the lobby, he walked briskly out of the building. One security camera captured him clearly as he exited around 8:48 a.m., wearing a baseball cap and casual clothes. Another camera at a nearby hotel showed him minutes before, at 8:29 a.m., still in his worker disguise, heading to the scene. The disguise had been peeled off like a second skin. Outside, the assassin disposed of evidence. In a dumpster or alley nearby, Sukari tossed the white bag containing the bloodied maintenance uniform, and possibly the knife, though some reports say he kept the knife. Unbeknownst to him, traces remained. On those discarded coveralls were 2 bloodstains. One was Suzanne's blood, the other matched Mohsen al-Sukari's DNA, likely from a cut he suffered during the struggle. He had also left a partial shoe print in blood. Analysis indicated it was from a size 10 Nike sneaker, and investigators managed to trace it to a specific model sold locally. In fact, checking Dubai store records, and perhaps working with credit card companies, they discovered a man had purchased a pair of Nike shoes, a tennis racket, and a sports outfit at a mall sports shop days before. The receipt, paid by MasterCard for 460 dirhams, was obtained and bore a signature, another lead. Even more intriguing, detectives recovered a shop receipt for a knife. It turned out the same suspect had also visited a shop called Sun and Sand Sports and Mostafawi Trading on July 27th, where he bought a Swiss knife and some tools. When confronted later, the suspect would claim it was just a multi-tool for personal use, but investigators believed this was the murder weapon purchase. All these clues, the clothes, the knife, the CCTV images, were pieces of a puzzle that formed a clear picture. An identifiable individual had planned and executed this murder methodically. Dubai police moved swiftly on the biggest clue of all, DNA. The forensic lab tested the bloodstain on the discarded clothing and confirmed it was not only Suzanne's blood, but also contained foreign DNA belonging to an unknown male. Dubai's police database didn't have a match, but they had a strong hunch the killer was the same person seen on video, likely a foreign national given the sophistication. Since the evidence pointed toward an Egyptian connection, the earlier threats to Suzanne were known by her family, though initially police weren't publicly aware. Dubai authorities quietly reached out to their counterparts in Egypt for assistance. They provided Egyptian officials with the CCTV stills and the DNA profile. Meanwhile, news of Suzanne Tamim's killing broke across the Middle East. On July 29th, headlines in the UAE and Lebanon blared the shocking news. Lebanese singer Suzanne Tamim found murdered in Dubai. The initial reports were sensational. Some claimed that her body had been decapitated, a gruesome rumor that spread fast. In reality, as the Dubai coroner clarified, Suzanne's throat was slit, not fully beheaded. But the brutality of the crime was the same. Public speculation ran rampant. Was it a crazed fan? An enraged ex-husband? Organized crime? Suzanne's troubled history provided no shortage of possible angles, and the Dubai police's tight-lipped stance, they refused to release details initially, only fueled the rumor mill. At one point, her first husband Ali Muzanar was suggested in gossip, or even a random stalker. However, behind closed doors, investigators were honing in on a far more complex truth. Within 72 hours of the murder, a major break came. Working with the evidence from Dubai, Egyptian state security identified a suspect, Mohsen al-Sukari, a former police officer from Egypt. Al-Sukari had left the police and taken a job as head of security at one of Hisham Talat Mustafa's hotels in Sharm el-Sheikh. Critically, his fingerprints were on file from his police days, and they matched prints lifted in Suzanne's apartment, according to leaks later reported. Moreover, the signature on the credit card receipts matched his name. And Egyptian immigration records showed that Mohsen al-Sukari travelled from Cairo to Dubai on July 26th and returned on July 28th, perfectly aligning with the timeline of the murder. It was enough for Egyptian authorities to act. On August 1st, 2008, just 3 days after Suzanne's death was discovered, Egyptian police arrested Mohsen al-Sukari at a hotel in Cairo. In a scene as cinematic as the crime itself, they reportedly found him lounging by the pool of a 5-star hotel, as if without a care in the world. Sukari did not expect Egyptian cops to be onto him so quickly. He was taken into custody for interrogation, and soon the dam broke. Facing mounting evidence, Mohsen al-Sukari confessed to the murder within days of his arrest. But crucially, he made it clear he hadn't acted alone. Under questioning, al-Sukari revealed a tale that would send shockwaves from Dubai to Cairo to Beirut. He claimed he was hired to kill Suzanne Tamim, and the man who ordered the hit was none other than Hisham Talat Mustafa. He detailed how Hisham had asked him nearly a year earlier to start tracking Suzanne's movements abroad and plan her assassination. He described the meeting after the murder, how on the night of July 28th he met Hisham privately in Cairo to report mission accomplished. In Sukari's version, he even handed Hisham a package of cocaine that he had planted in Suzanne's apartment as part of an earlier scheme to get her jailed on drug charges, telling Hisham that the drugs were in place for a fake tip-off. According to Sukari, Hisham praised him. "Bravo," he said, and promised that Sukari's payment would be delivered soon, instructing him to wait at the Sharm el-Sheikh hotel where an intermediary would bring the money. Indeed, when police later searched Sukari's properties, they found $2 million in cash, some in a briefcase at his villa in Sheikh Zayed district, and some deposited in his bank accounts, which Sukari admitted was the payoff from Hisham. The evidence of a pay-for-murder scheme was piling up. Large unexplained sums, phone records of Hisham contacting Sukari repeatedly, and even mentions of recorded phone calls between them. Sukari had tried to tape some of Hisham's calls as insurance. The very fact he tried to record Hisham suggested consciousness of a murder plot. With Hisham's explosive statements, the stage was now set for one of the most dramatic trials in Egypt's modern history. In October 2008, the trial of Mohsen al-Sukari and Hisham Talat Mustafa commenced in Cairo's criminal court. The courtroom was thronged with spectators and journalists from across the region. Many dubbed it the trial of the century. After all, it's not often that a member of the elite is tried for ordering a hit on a celebrity ex-lover. Hisham arrived at court each day in a pristine white prison uniform, still carrying himself with the confidence of a tycoon. In the dock next to him sat Mohsen al-Sukari, also in white prison garb, often seen quietly reading the Quran during breaks. The contrast was stark. One man a multi-billionaire with a phalanx of expensive lawyers, the other a former cop turned hired killer who had already confessed. Both men's families packed the courtroom's front rows, Hisham's relatives dressed in black, radiating anxiety and disbelief. From the outset, both defendants pleaded not guilty when formal charges were read. Mohsen al-Sukari had, according to prosecutors, given a full confession during interrogation, but now in court, he retracted it, claiming it had been coerced, and that he was just spying on Suzanne, not killing her. Hisham's defense team, led by prominent attorneys, went on the offensive. They insisted that Hisham had no conceivable reason to kill Suzanne Tamim, and that all evidence linking him to the crime was circumstantial or fabricated. In a dramatic move, Hisham wrote a letter from prison that was published in Egypt's state-owned newspaper during the trial's early days. In it, he proclaimed his innocence. How could I throw away all my success and destroy myself with such a rash act? Does it make sense that any sensible person would commit such a heinous crime? Hisham portrayed himself as the victim of conspirators and knife sharpeners eating my flesh while I'm alive. A colourful phrase indicating that his enemies were out to get him. This letter was effectively a public relations gambit to sway opinion that he was framed. Despite the defence's efforts, the prosecution presented a formidable case built on evidence gathered by Dubai police and Egyptian investigators. Over multiple court sessions, more than 20, though most behind closed doors, the judges examined it all. Surveillance footage from Dubai clearly showed Mohsen al-Sukari entering and exiting Suzanne's building at the time of the murder. Frames from those videos were displayed, and although Sukari claimed those pictures aren't me, the physical resemblance was unmistakable. Forensic experts testified about the blood evidence, the DNA match for Sukari, and the shoe print that matched Sukari's footwear. They even brought the actual Nike shoe in question and the matching MasterCard receipts for its purchase, with Sukari's acknowledged signature. Sukari's weak rebuttal that the shoes were his, but he didn't recall what he did with them, rang hollow when confronted with lab results. Here the prosecutors leaned on witness statements. Although Suzanne herself was not alive to testify, her voice came through in the form of reports she had made. The prosecution introduced evidence of Suzanne's complaint to British authorities about Hisham's threats. They called Riyad al-Azawi, Suzanne's husband from London, via deposition or interview, where he recounted the chilling $50 million ultimatum and death threat from Hisham. Lebanese witnesses, including Suzanne's family, also described how she feared Hisham. This helped establish a narrative. Hisham had a clear motive, a mix of jealous rage and wounded pride over Suzanne leaving him, and had openly threatened to do exactly what happened. The cornerstone was the $2 million payment. An Egyptian bank official and police officers testified how Mohsen al-Sukari had suddenly come into a huge sum of money after the murder. They produced the actual seized money, $1.54 million in cash in a bag that Sukari handed over, plus another $300,000 that he had in his HSBC account, totaling roughly $1.84 million. Sukari admitted under oath, "Yes, I handed it to police. I had taken it from Hisham Talat, as I said." This was a damning admission, aligning with his earlier confession that the full agreed price was $2 million. No plausible, innocent explanation existed for why Hisham would give his hotel security man that much cash. Telecom experts presented records of phone calls between Hisham and Sukari around the dates of planning and after the murder. Sukari had 3 mobile phones. He indicated one HTC device was primarily used for calls with Hisham, and indeed, records showed numerous calls from Hisham's number. There was the mention of attempted audio recordings of calls. Sukari had told investigators he recorded a couple of conversations with Hisham on that phone, though he claimed the files got deleted. This likely made an impression on the judges. even if the tapes weren't recovered. Although Sukari retracted his confession in court, the prosecution still had it on record. Egyptian law allows a properly obtained confession to be considered, and investigators who took Sukari's statement recounted its content, with safeguards that it was taken legally. In that confession, Sukari detailed how Hisham recruited him, how he tracked Suzanne in London and then in Dubai, and how Hisham explicitly ordered him to cut off her head. He described Hisham's intense hatred and desire for gruesome revenge. This part was so graphic that it even provided context for the initial media rumors of beheading. It wasn't random gossip. It came from the killer's own words that he'd been told to deliver her head as proof. The defense tried to poke holes in the Dubai investigation. They brought in their own forensic expert at one point to claim the evidence could have been tampered, or that the DNA was not conclusively Sukari's. Hisham's lawyers argued he had an alibi, though none that truly held up. He was in Egypt at the time of the murder, but that was never disputed. The issue was incitement. They also insinuated that perhaps Adel Matouk or others had a motive to frame Hisham. But these theories did not gain traction in the face of the hard evidence. Egyptian media initially reported the developments with intense interest. Initially, sessions were even televised live, a rarity, turning it into a courtroom spectacle akin to the O.J. Simpson trial in the US. But after a few days, a media blackout was imposed by the judge to ensure a fair trial. Journalists were barred from publishing details, and 5 even got charged for defying the gag order at one point. Still, the broad outline of proceedings got out. The mere sight of a high-ranking politician behind bars was unprecedented for many Egyptians. On May 21, 2009, the Cairo Criminal Court delivered its verdict. The presiding judge, flanked by 2 others, Egypt has no jury system, announced the outcome in a packed courtroom at 9 a.m. Hisham Talat Mustafa and Mohsen al-Sukari were both found guilty on all counts. As a hush fell, the judge then pronounced the sentence, death by hanging for both men. Gasps and cries erupted in the courtroom. Hisham's wife, attending in support of her husband, fainted on the spot. Hisham himself went pale and stone-faced, staring ahead in shock, while his 2 daughters broke into sobs, and his sister also fainted amidst the chaos. Nearby, Mohsen al-Sukari's family wailed. His father shouted that his son was being scapegoated. Security struggled to maintain order as some of Hisham's entourage scuffled with journalists who pressed forward for reactions. Within minutes, the judge had the courtroom cleared. After the punishments were read, one Cairo housewife was quoted as saying, "I thought for sure el-Sukari would be found guilty, but Mustafa would somehow go scot-free because of his political influence and wealth. Today's verdict is a victory for the masses in Egypt who had stopped believing in our justice system." Indeed, the severity of the sentence sent a powerful message. Not even the rich and powerful are above the law. On June 25, 2009, as required by Egyptian procedure, the Grand Mufti of Egypt formally approved the death sentences, and the court confirmed them. It appeared that justice for Suzanne Tamim was being served in full measure. However, the story was not over. In Egypt's legal system, there is an automatic right of appeal to the Court of Cassation, the highest appellate court. Hisham's legal team immediately filed an appeal, citing alleged irregularities in the trial. In a dramatic twist, about a year later, in March 2010, the Court of Cassation overturned the convictions and ordered a retrial. The decision hinged on a procedural technicality. Reportedly, the defense argued that some evidence procedures were flawed, or that the judge had not allowed certain witnesses, thus depriving the defendants of a fair trial. The High Court did not declare them innocent. It simply mandated a do-over of the trial with proper procedure. Suzanne's family, who had been anxiously awaiting justice, faced the prospect of enduring the legal battle all over again. In a move that raised some eyebrows, Suzanne's father and family withdrew their civil claims against Hisham in May 2010, right around the retrial period. This suggested a possible settlement, or simply fatigue. We don't know publicly if any blood money or compensation was paid, but the timing hints that some understanding was reached to not pursue further damages. The retrial of Hisham Talat Mustafa and Mohsen al-Sukari took place over the course of 2010. This time there was less fanfare, the media blackout largely remained, and the public's focus had somewhat shifted. But people still cared deeply about the outcome, especially in Lebanon, where Suzanne's fans and family wanted closure, and in Egypt, where the case had become symbolic of accountability. In late September 2010, the retrial concluded. The Cairo court found both men guilty again of the murder and conspiracy. That part did not change. What did change was the sentencing. On September 28, 2010, the judge issued a new verdict. Hisham Talat Mustafa would be sentenced to 15 years in prison, and Mohsen al-Sukari to life in prison, 25 years. The death penalty was off the table. The reduction was significant. The courtroom was not as crowded this time, and the verdict's timing took many by surprise. It was announced without prior indication that that day's session would be final. Some speculated this was done to avoid a frenzy. Why the lighter sentences? Officially, the court gave no detailed public explanation beyond having followed the cassation court's directives and reassessed some evidence. Unofficially, observers believed that Hisham's influence had finally played its part. The initial death sentence had shocked the establishment. Perhaps behind closed doors, deals were made to ensure Hisham's life was spared. There was precedent in Egyptian judicial practice to be more lenient on retrial, especially if the victim's family, Suzanne's, was no longer actively pressing for maximum punishment, which they weren't by then. Also, Egyptian law counts prison years as 9 months each for good behavior, meaning a 15-year sentence could effectively be under 12 actual years served. Public reaction to the reduced sentence was mixed. Many Egyptians were cynical, saying that money had spoken in the end, and that a politically connected man would never hang. Lebanese observers and Suzanne's fans felt a tinge of injustice, but at least there was still a guilty verdict. The consensus was that Hisham got off lightly for ordering a brutal murder. Still, both men went back to prison to serve their terms, and the legal case was essentially closed. In the years that followed, the sensational headlines faded, but the characters lived out the aftermath. Hisham Talat Mustafa spent the next several years in Tora prison, a facility in Cairo for high-profile inmates. Perhaps unsurprisingly, rumors emerged periodically that he was being given special treatment or that he was in ill health. By 2017, after about 9 years behind bars, Hisham's name surfaced in news again. In June 2017, Egyptian media reported that President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi had issued a presidential pardon for Hisham Talat Mustafa, along with other prisoners, on the occasion of Eid al-Fitr. His lawyer confirmed that Hisham was released under a general pardon for inmates who had served more than half their sentence. Hisham had indeed served a bit over 9 years, which is roughly 60% of his 15-year term, especially counting the 9-month-year formula. On a summer day in 2017, Hisham walked out of prison a free man, returning to his opulent home in Cairo. His release caused a brief public outcry. Many Egyptians and virtually all Lebanese who followed the case felt it was too lenient. Yet legally, it fit the pattern of holiday pardons and was not revoked. Mohsen al-Sukari, initially left in prison serving a life term, also eventually tasted freedom. In May 2020, as Egypt faced the COVID-19 pandemic, the government issued mass pardons for thousands of inmates. Among those unexpectedly included was Mohsen al-Sukari. After roughly 12 years in custody, the hired killer of Suzanne Tamim was quietly released. This news reignited controversy, especially in Lebanon. Lebanese media decried that both the mastermind and the hitman in their countrywoman's murder had been set free in the span of a few years. Some questioned if justice was truly served, or if these pardons were favors to the powerful. In Sukari's case, perhaps a favor to Hisham or others. The Egyptian government provided no specific reasoning beyond stating Sukari qualified for pardon. Outrage bubbled on social media in 2020, but with the world distracted by larger events, and Suzanne's case 12 years old by then, it remained mostly a footnote. Suzanne Tamim's story does not end neatly. Unresolved questions linger to this day. Was justice truly served? On paper, yes. Those responsible were convicted, but the early release of both men leaves a moral grey area. Some in Lebanon feel that Suzanne's blood cries out for a justice that was not fully realized. The case also exposed uncomfortable truths about power and accountability in the Arab world. Initially, many were surprised that an Egyptian court even convicted Hisham at all. It was seen as a victory for rule of law in a region where the elite often escape consequences. Yet the subsequent reduction and pardons revived cynicism, reinforcing the notion that money talks. From a legal standpoint, the case was groundbreaking. The United Arab Emirates chose not to seek extradition of the suspects, recognizing that Egypt was unlikely to hand over its citizens. Instead, the UAE cooperated by sharing evidence, and Egypt prosecuted under a principle of extraterritorial jurisdiction. Egyptian law allows trial of citizens for crimes abroad, especially if national security or international treaties are at play. It set a precedent for cross-border justice in the region. Dubai's police were lauded for their forensic work. Within hours, they knew the killer's identity, and within days had coordinated his capture. The case even pushed investigative techniques. Dubai's police chief mentioned plans to use 3D crime scene recreations to bolster evidence in cases like Tamim's. Culturally, the trial of Hisham shattered the taboo of publicly accusing a high official of a crime. It was perhaps a small early crack in the facade of untouchability of the powerful, something that would resonate in Egypt in the years leading up to the 2011 revolution. For Suzanne's family, the outcome was bittersweet. They had lost their bright, loving daughter in the most violent way. Her father, Abed al-Sattar, who once tried so hard to shield her, was left with grief and perhaps guilt, wondering if things could have been different. In interviews, he expressed relief that the truth came out and thanked the authorities for their work. But nothing could bring Suzanne back. In a poignant gesture, Suzanne's body was brought home to Lebanon and laid to rest in her native soil, away from the tumult that consumed her final years. Today, Suzanne Tamim's legacy lives on in multiple ways. First, of course, through her music. Songs like Sakan Albi and Aktar Minawal Ahebak still play on Arabic nostalgia radio, and fans remember her as the talented singer with a golden smile. She has, in a sense, become an icon martyred by the dark side of fame and power. Her story has been told and retold in Arab media, sometimes with a cautionary tone about the perils that can befall young women in showbiz who get involved with powerful men. The case also had a wider cultural impact. It sparked conversations about domestic abuse, stalking, and the vulnerability of women, even high-profile ones. Suzanne went from one controlling relationship to another and tried to escape, only to meet a tragic end. Women's rights advocates in the Middle East pointed out that Suzanne's pleas for help, to police, to friends, went unheeded until it was too late. Her fate underscored the need for better protection and serious treatment of threats. In Egypt, the fact that a rich man faced consequences was hailed by some as progress, a victory for the masses, as one Egyptian put it. But the later twists tempered that. Still, it remains one of the few cases where a member of the elite was publicly tried for such a crime. It also highlighted issues of press freedom. The gag order and arrest of journalists for covering the trial became a point of contention about transparency in the legal system. Suzanne's murder has seeped into popular culture as well. It inspired works of fiction and film. Notably, a 2017 award-winning neo-noir film, The Niall Hilton Incident, was loosely based on her case. Set in Cairo, it tells of a singer murdered and a powerful figure implicated, with a cop navigating corruption to solve it, clearly drawing from the Tamim saga. The film's existence is a testament to how sensational and emblematic Suzanne's story had become. A mix of celebrity, money, sex, and violence that reads like the plot of a thriller. Over a decade later, people still talk about the Suzanne Tamim case. On anniversaries of her death, Lebanese TV channels sometimes run retrospectives, remembering the pop star princess and recounting the courtroom drama that followed. In Dubai, the case is remembered as one of the few high-profile murders in an otherwise low-crime city, a case swiftly solved by their police force's prowess. In Egypt, however, it's remembered with a bit of ambivalence, as a scandal that was both a proud moment for justice and later an example of how the influential can ultimately slip the noose. For those who loved Suzanne, her family, friends and fans, the pain of losing her lingers. Yet they try to remember her not as a victim, but as the vibrant young woman who lit up the stage with songs of love. Her brother Khalil once said softly, "Susan was the victim of her beauty." And in a way she was. Many men desired her. Some tried to control her. One ultimately had her killed when he couldn't possess her. It's a heartbreaking reality that such a talented life was cut short due to obsession and ego. In the end, the story of Suzanne Tamim is a sobering tale of fame, love, betrayal, and tragedy. It serves as a reminder that behind the glamour of stardom can lurk great darkness, and that sometimes truth is stranger and sadder than any fiction. Suzanne's voice was silenced, but through this story, we ensure her memory and the lessons from her life and death endure. Thank you so much for listening. As a new podcast, we very much appreciate your support. If you're interested in rarely heard global murder cases like this one, we encourage you to give us a follow, or even rate us 5 stars on your podcast app. If we may be so bold, it would help us out a lot. See you next time.